One. All right.
All right.
Hey, Wausome friends. Welcome back to another episode of Keep It Wausome. I'm your host, BC Kowalski, as always, recording from in a safe, socially safe distance manner in our Whitewater Studio Music Hall. Whitewater Music Hall Studio. Man, I can't talk today. I got a really cool guest for you today, but before we get to Rie, I'm going to talk about a contest we got going on right now to try to bring in more subscribers. I've partnered with Wild Roots Apothecary in Schofield, and we're going to give away 2 smoothies or smoothie bowls, and they are really good. Let me tell you, I've had like 2 or 3 of them, and I'm wishing they were open right now. They're going to be open May 15th again. And so we're going to give two of those away, as well as a small vial of CBD oil. So what do you got to do to win that? All you got to do is go to our YouTube channel or our iTunes channel and subscribe, and take a screenshot of that and send it to keepitwasome@gmail.com. That's keepitwasome@gmail.com. And if you do both, I'll give you 2 entries. So send that in. I'm going to run that through May 15th. So this will probably be the last podcast that we talk about it on. And you can send it in through May 15th, and then we'll be good to go, and we'll announce the winners on a Facebook Live. But I have a very exciting guest today. This is an old friend from UW Stevens Point that I've known quite a while. She is a piano instructor at St. Paul Conservatory of Music and Mount Olivet School of Music in Minneapolis. She's a national lecturer now, has a doctorate, I believe, from the University of Minnesota. She's nodding yes, that sounds right. And also happens to be a yoga instructor and the founder of Wellness for Musicians. We're going to talk about that today for sure. And also does solo and chamber performances all around the country. Was supposed to go to Japan even to do this recently. And but really highly sought out as a solo and chamber musician as well. She's one heck of a piano player. I'm supposed to say pianist, right? Like that's the official title.
Yes,
yeah. But give a warm welcome for Rie Tanaka. Rie, how are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, well, reading through your list of accomplishments, like you've really tacked on a lot of stuff since we used to hang out in Stevens Point.
I know. I was like 18, 19. That was just when I first arrived to America, and I didn't know right to left, and I was just clueless little girl from Japan. And then
you were from Osaka, Japan, right?
Yes, proudly Japan, Osaka Japanese girl.
So I've been to Osaka, and it is it's a very busy place. Very crowded compared to Stevens Point. Like one of these things I'm really interested in is when Japanese people come to the US for the first time and they go to school at UW Stevens Point. There's a town of about 30,000 coming from a place that probably had millions. What's that like? What is that like?
Well, so for a year or 2, I had this huge bubble just on me, just thinking, wow, this place doesn't matter. This place is not cool. Nothing really matters to me. I came from the big city, and it just was not cool to me. I mean, I came to Stevens Point not as a choice of my own, but I came because I followed my piano teacher that I met in Japan, and he brought me to Stevens Point. And that's a cool story, actually, is how when he first invited me to come study with him in America, he was in New Jersey. And I was really excited to go to New Jersey to study with him. And I said, yeah, of course, I'll go. And then I think a few months before I moved here, he got a position as a tenure track professor at UWSP. And he said, hey, do you still want to go to the University in New Jersey, or do you want to come to Stevens Point to study with me? And I said, of course, I'm going to come to study with you. That's the whole reason why I'm going to America. So I landed, and I typed and looked up University of Wisconsin, and Madison came up. I was like, well, that sounds okay, I guess. And it's like, I guess 3 hours from Chicago. I could deal with that. And then I looked, I saw the Stevens Point in a little letter, and I was like, well, I better put that in there too, and found the little city of Stevens Point. So for about a year or two, I was living in a bubble. I did not want to lose the sense of big city girl. You know, I wasn't really interested in getting to know people from Stevens Point. Because I was just there for my own piano journey and not for my personal journey. And that all changed when I met a lot of local people, a lot of people in Stevens Point, Wausome, and they were just one of the best people on earth. I was so blown away by how amazing, how nice and generous and all the things. I've never experienced such kindness from complete strangers. So I was like, wow, what is this? And then now I go back to Stevens Point like all the time. My husband is from Stevens Point, so I'm really a big fan of Central Wisconsin now.
Wow. Now, did you come to Stevens Point with the idea that you would stay all 4 years? I know a lot of exchange students come for a year, and that's kind of like a year experience, but
yeah, certainly. I wanted to stay as long as my professor was there. It didn't matter where I was or who else was in the studio or in a school. So I definitely planned on staying there unless he was going to move somewhere. But you know, during that time, I really didn't make any kind of decision. I just kind of like let him choose where to go, like just followed everyone. But I'm just so fortunate that I went to Stevens Point, not New Jersey. You know? Yeah. So that was amazing.
And then you went to the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that. Now, did you always have it in your mind that you were going to go all the way to get your doctorate in piano?
Yes, that I knew. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach in a higher education. That's still what I want to try to do. That was just always my dream job. So I knew that I had to go all the way to get doctor's degree in our field. It's almost expected that you get doctor's degree in piano performance or whatever to be even considered to teach at that position. So I was definitely going to get that higher degrees. But how I decided with Minnesota is to actually stay close to Stevens Point. I didn't want to go to East Coast. I didn't want to go to South or West Coast because that just is too far and too hard to go back to Stevens Point on a regular basis. So I auditioned for all the Midwest schools, and University of Minnesota gave me the best option. So that's why I decided to come here.
Yeah, what's that audition process like? Is that a pretty arduous thing to try out for all these places? I mean, I've gone to some of your concerts and I watch you and I think, oh wow, she could get in anywhere. But I'm not in that world. Like, I am a musician, but not nearly at anything close to that level. And I just wonder, like, what's that process like? How nitpicky is it? How does that work? It's super interesting to me.
That, I think, depends on the school and the teacher. I think it was worse in Japan than it is in here. I have a feeling here, you sometimes know the teacher before you audition, so that you're not just like gambling on who is going to take you, because this is the professor you're going to spend the next 3-4 years with. So a lot of time you begin by getting to know professors, or your professor knows this professor, and that's how you would begin the audition process. But there's, of course, a lot of people who audition for name school, like Juilliard, Cardis. There's the brand name school that if you go there, then it looks really good on your resume. And that a lot of people prepare that audition process Probably even just like people who want to go there for undergraduate, they probably begin their preparation in early high school or even before. I've seen people building their resume in their, like when they're only 13 years old, they write down who they studied with, which music school when they went to, or music festivals. So it's the kind of like resume building battle that already begins in early teens, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now, I remember you telling me you started piano at a very early age. Is that correct?
Yes, at age 3.
Age 3.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Walk me through that process, because, you know, obviously at 3 years old, I don't know how much you wanted to play piano versus you were told to play piano.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what's been your relationship to piano over the years? How has that changed from 3 years old to now?
Yes, it's changed a lot. My mother was a piano teacher, so she got me started on piano. And that was actually a request from my father, who really wanted his daughter, me, to be able to play the piano. But my mother, being a piano teacher and pianist herself, actually she has given up her hope for becoming a pianist. So she's very bitter about the whole classical music scene and becoming a concert pianist. So she really didn't want to be a piano teacher because she knew she'll be so hard to me, and it would be just so toxic to both me and my mother. But but then he just kind of, why don't you just give it a try? So we started, and that was just so hard, unrealistically difficult when my mother would lock me in the practice room for 6 to 8 hours a day, every day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I had no time to do anything other than piano.
How old were you when you were practicing 6 to 8 hours a day?
Yeah, like kindergarten, I think kindergarten was not that bad, but like in age 7 to 9 or something like that, I was on a constant competition circuit. I was in 3 or 4 competitions a year. It was really crazy. And when I talk about some of the symptoms of crazy amount of stress I was under, people just really get, whoa, you've gone through that, so that stuff I don't even think about that was really that crazy. But when I think about how the floor of my piano practice room was covered with hair, because I was so stressed that I was losing so much hair, and I was also pulling the hair. So I'm sorry if that leaves a really bad taste in your mouth, but I was like really, really stressed. And I've gone through some early injury. I was seeing a not chiropractor, but like a physical therapist, a physicians, for when I was like 2nd or 3rd grade. And I used to go there every day alone. And of course, in there, it's mostly senior people, so they all recognize me, and it's just the crazy, crazy things happen.
Wow.
So needless to say, I didn't enjoy the piano.
I was going to say, you must have just like really resented the piano during that period of your life.
Yes.
At some point that must have changed.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
So it went from just I had a really difficult time giving up piano because, 1, my mother was really good at guilt tripping me. 2, that has become my identity by the time I was in middle school, that if I quit piano, what is left of me? So I just kept playing but had no passion, wasn't practicing that much. So, my mom told me, if you don't get into this high school, you are going to quit piano because you're not going to make it. So I was like, okay, sounds good. This was a difficult music high school in Japan, in Osaka, the public music high school. That's the only one in Osaka. And every year, I think now it's about 200, 300 people apply and only 40 people getting or something like that. When I applied, it wasn't that difficult.
And this is like an aspect of Japan I think maybe a lot of people aren't aware of, but a lot of the high schools it's hyper competitive to get into a lot of the high schools, because those high schools set you up for, to get into the best universities. Is accurate?
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
If you want to go into the specialized and higher ranked high school, it's really difficult for you to go to the lower rank high school and get into the higher ranked university. So it's very much systemized and streamlined like that. So I obviously wasn't doing too well with studying because I was practicing all the time and I got 0 for a lot of my tests.
Oh, wow.
It's so embarrassing how I failed a lot of my tests, and a lot of subjects were just bad. Math, I can't do math even now.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so I applied for this and I got in, and actually that was my first time I met another person who take music as seriously as I did. Because I was always alone. I was the only person that I knew that was practicing piano as much as I was doing. And I was so lonely. I had no community or support system whatsoever. And then in high school, just world opened up to me where everyone had the same struggle as I did. And we were talking about I just felt like that place in Japan was so different and so special, where all 40 people are trying to become a professional musician, and we are singing all the time, we're harmonizing all the time, and we hear the sound and we sing in solfege, and we have music dictation, music history classes. So it was so special. But the biggest thing is that I rediscovered the love of music through connecting with people, where I was like, oh, I do really like music when I can play for each other and we can enjoy the music. So that was actually, for the first time, music became the actual what music is supposed to be for me.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Like, so all the way from basically being a kindergartner to through junior high or middle school or whatever, you basically are practicing like 6 to 8 hours a day and just hating it.
Yep.
Is what it sounds like. And it wasn't until you were able to go to the specialized music school and connect with other people that you started actually enjoying it, is what it sounds like.
Yes, and actually what really, really doubled, tripled my love for music is coming to America, which is why I'm not leaving here. I cannot imagine myself being a musician in Japan because of how expressed the art is and how difficult it is to live as an artist in Japan. Like, no one supports arts, no one goes to concerts. It's just a very dead end kind of culture. But I came to here, and as you know, I couldn't speak English at all. If you remember me.
I don't remember your English ever being that bad, but...
Oh, it was bad. I failed all my English courses in high school.
Really?
Yes, there's an episode where in my high school classes, in order for you to get to the next grade, so if you're a freshman, you need to go to get to sophomore. In order for you to do that, you actually have to pass all the subjects, but you can fail up to 3 courses. So what I did is that I carefully chose the ones that are really bad. So I chose the English writing, and math, so that I could actually work on all the other subjects, so that I can kind of get, past that pass line, and I can actually become the sophomore. So the English was always the first to go for me.
Well, what was that? That must have been pretty tough to come to the U.S. then the first time. That first year must have been a challenge for you.
A lot of hardship happened in the first year. I think that how hard it was almost shaped my entire belief system and really changed my personality in one or another way. It really was difficult.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, coming to this new place, knowing nobody can't speak in any English. And I was 18, super naive, never left home. And I was surrounded by a lot of exchange students who has already gone through, they're already a lot more grown up than I was. And I was just very naive and almost selfish to their eyes because of how privileged I felt and how proud I was and how needy I was, and like I was just so not aware of the social rules of, you know, to give and take and like show care and love. Like I only took from things and I never really knew how to give back. Like I was just the girl that left Japan for the first time, and it was really, really difficult. Yeah, from there, I really, really worked hard to learn English, and I worked really hard to make friends, and I was also really short on money, so I've gone through a lot of hardships, but worked hard and got a lot out of it. I think a lot of my strength now comes from the suffering and the grinding and all the parts that I had to do in my first couple years in undergrad.
Yeah, I really feel like situations that challenge us help us to grow. I'm a firm believer of that. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
How did you're primarily a classical musician?
Yes.
Do you dabble into jazz as well?
I try.
Because there's always been that weird divide, right? Especially with piano, it's either you're a jazz musician or a classical musician, or is that?
I think like both jazz and classical musicians both try to do one another. You know, the jazz musician will still study some classical to gain some technique, and classical musician always dream of being a jazz musician. So I don't think there is that. The divide is never like kind of like, hey, you know, and not like that hostile style. But I definitely really loved jazz and really tried to play. And there's still a couple of my friends who just like, I think you can be a jazz musician. I'm still going to try it. But jazz is one of those things that you're not going to just do because it's good for you or it helps you career-wise. You need a lot of passion for jazz. And you need a lot of time for jazz. You need to listen a lot. It's a completely different language that I need to start over. And I'm almost worse at starting a new genre in music than starting something completely new, because failing on piano is a lot harder than failing on yoga or failing in kendo or like failing something else. You know, I really have a hard time sounding bad on a piano. So I don't think I could really become a jazz musician at this point.
I was going to ask you why it's hard, but you don't like the sound of it. Like if you hear yourself play it badly on piano, it'll bug you. Is that what you're saying? That's
part of it. It's just that learning curve that I need to go through. Like I know how much effort and time that needs to go into it in order for me to come out on the other side and feel good about how I play. It's just not a fun enough process for me, and I don't have enough patience and passion for it. You're gonna play jazz if you can't not play jazz, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, you mentioned yoga, and that was one of the things I noticed recently, that you've been posting a lot about yoga. Tell me how you came interested in yoga, how that came about.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it goes all the way back to the 3rd or 4th year of my undergrad. Really, all the hard things happened in my undergraduate. It's when I injured my hands from over practicing, and that was so hard because I was in this country trying to become a pianist, gave up everything in Japan to be here, and now I had to give up piano too because I broke my wrist, and then I broke my right wrist, and I couldn't play the piano, so I completely stopped playing piano for 6 months. And during that time,
that long? Wow.
Yeah. Otherwise, I couldn't have come back. So it was so hard, and I was just devastated and angry. I was thinking, why did no one tell me that injury would happen this easily and quickly? Why couldn't I avoid injury? Why is classical music a thing where injury is so common. But there is a data that 89% of professional musicians have gone through injury at some point of their lives. And it's even higher with some areas. And that's not just classical musicians. I know a lot of drummers go through injuries, and vocal cords injury. And there's so much injury that are associated with musical activities. And I felt that in everywhere I studied at, there was very little talk about how to avoid injuries, or how injuries is caused, and that sort of thing. So after I recovered from the injury, I decided that I am going to do something about this. It's going to be something, maybe I can create a course, maybe I can write a book. But I also discovered that there are a lot of books and a lot of people who are advocating this already. So I almost just kind of like, hey, I don't know if I really need to do this. But I was kind of short of my idea for dissertation, so I decided to just write about the wellness for musician course that I've been teaching. And my professor said he really liked my dissertation. He said, hey, now in order for you to bring this dissertation to the next level, you're going to need some kind of certificate. Do you think you can just get a physical therapy certificate? And I was like, that's not how physical therapy work. Like, you can't just get the certificate. You're gonna need like years and years and years of, like, it's a medical degree. I can't just do that. So I thought, and then the closest thing really was the yoga teacher certificate. And I've been doing yoga for 7 years. Since I moved to Minnesota, I kept going to yoga studios. So I was like, that sounds good. So I went, and I was blown. Like, it was amazing. I met my Guruji. He really opened my world up to much higher knowledge, higher place. And I was just like drinking all the essence of the ancient knowledge, ancient teachings. And I would discover the strength of my body. I never done anything physical, but they really unlocked a lot of obstacles for me. So now I'm a huge yoga fan. If you can tell, I just yoga every day. And
I went to yoga training in 2018.
Wow,
and
nice.
I'm not really teaching yoga. It's not. I decided it's not something I want to do right now. But I think even for people, I think for anyone, if you're really into yoga, like the teaching training is really valuable experience, even if you don't end up teaching. I think there's just so much you gain from it. There's so much you learn about yourself, and it's probably when I definitely consider it in the top 10 experiences of my life. So I'm glad I did it.
Absolutely. I think that yoga teacher training really is more for myself than, and then if I really want to teach full time, then I would need a lot more training. 200 hours isn't really then enough time for you to be a full time, like completely knowledgeable about all parts of your body and that sort of thing. Yeah. You're going to need continuing education, and you're going to need a higher level of knowledge with yoga teacher training. But in terms of what has impacted just my own body, that was so good. And I don't think I can think of anyone who don't need yoga teacher training. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
When you after you went to yoga teacher training, when you came back, did it change how you saw the piano at all, or did it change anything about your piano playing, or did it have any impact in that regard?
No, it was actually the other way. When I went to the yoga teacher training, I realized a lot of what I was practicing on a piano was very much like practicing yoga.
Really?
My yoga teacher training. So my yoga is called Sampurna Yoga, which is a yoga of fullness. It has 6 different paths of yoga, and we do it all. And Hatha Yoga, which is the moving and actual doing asanas, that's just 1 out of 6 yogas we learned. So we did a lot of Nada Yoga, which is like singing and chanting, and you need to just be be able to just sing back what guru like sings for you. And there's a lot of mental practice, and of course, the practice of meditation, karma yoga. There's a lot of different kinds of yoga, which really turn my attention into, oh, so practicing piano is yoga. Like it is a practice for my mind and for my body, and to achieve higher level. And we do that without expecting anything in return, which is what another part of how music really is yoga practicing. So so understanding that yoga and coming closer to the path of yoga, that didn't necessarily change the way I deal with piano, because I'm a lot more experienced with, like practicing and playing the piano. But it has really given me a big push start in yoga path.
Interesting. What is playing piano like for you right now versus like say 10 years ago? Like, how do you look at the piano now? Like, what does it feel like to you? I'm just trying to imagine what it's like to have been so dedicated to an instrument for your entire life. Like, I don't have that experience. I feel like a lot of people don't have that experience, and I just wonder, like, what how you feel about the piano right now and how you look at it and what it means to you.
Piano has given me so much pain and so much strain and bondage in me all my life, but it has also given me the incredible strength and the purpose and the tool that I would always have. No matter where I am, how bad I feel, I would always have piano with me. So for that, I used to really be mad at my mother for just like never ever giving me the chance or choice to study. But actually this has been one thing that kept me where I am. It's kind of like an anchor that you put down, and no matter what happens, no matter what kind of weather comes to you and who comes to you, who beats you down or who brings you up, piano has always been the one core that just puts me straight. And that I'm so grateful for, because some difficult things has happened, and it will happen, but piano would remain the one place I can always come to. And of course, I sometimes want to run away from piano too, just having, actually now I'm very happy to have the grand piano at my home. It's just sitting right there. And at first it was a little bit difficult, because when I am practicing, I feel like I should be emailing or working. And when I'm not practicing, I feel like I should be practicing. So I was like in between expectation as a musician, as a person, as wife, as a teacher, and then all of that expectation kind of just all came to me, that I was not happy doing any of them at first. Wow. Like, sure, like the thing about practicing is it's never enough. I could not do too much. So it's just easier to avoid it at all, all the time. And I've gone through that many times too, but it still is what brought me to this place, and what connected me to all the people, and what is going to be the way for me to communicate for the rest of my life. When I couldn't speak English, piano was the way for me to communicate. And when I meet new people, piano is the way to communicate. And when they come to hear me play, they really understand me. They really hear me, and I'm so grateful for their open heart. The kind of connection and communication that I can do through music, it's so special. And this is something I couldn't have done without all the training that I've gone through. So I'm forever thankful for that.
I completely understand what you're saying about how it's never enough, because I think that's why I struggle, because I was a music major my first time in college.
I did
And
not know that.
did we talk about that?
I don't remember. Maybe we did. In what instrument?
I was a viola major. Yeah. And
Wow. At UWSP?
Well, UW Marathon. Yeah. Which is now part of UWSP because
Yep.
they're all on campus now. But yeah, I think that was the struggle at the time. I don't think I was disciplined enough because I always, like you said, it's never enough. The reason I liked being an English major is it would be like, oh, read chapters 1 through 7. Okay, well, I know when I get to chapter 7, I'm done. I did what I was supposed to do, and I can go about my life. And with music, it was always different. It was like, well, how do I know if I practiced enough? Did I not practice? Or did I, sight singing? I was always terrible at sight singing. So, I would try to practice that, but I would go through it a couple times. But I don't think I had the discipline at that point in my life to say, yeah, I need to practice this more. Like, because I need to practice this more than I think that I should, so that I can improve enough to get through class.
But there's a lot of negative belief and a lot of shaming that is built into classical music as a culture, as an expectation, which it's something I want to change too. But at the same time, to say, part that really was difficult for me is that if I love music enough, it's not going to get me practice every day. And like, I used to think of that kind of love-based motivation as the single only thing that is most important and the most powerful thing. So I thought to myself, like, all these people are able to practice because they love piano so much, but I don't like practicing. Is that because I don't love piano? Did I choose the wrong path? And that was like the biggest question in my mind for the longest time, is that, do I love music? Because I don't practice makes me feel like I don't love music enough. And then there are times that I'm like, of course I love music, but there are times I really don't want to practice. So these are conflicting parts where I should love music and I should want to practice, but I am not. And what does that mean? But then I discovered that practice is not about motivation. It's not about how much you love or what goal you even have. It's about just having the routine. Just every day do it without trying to gain anything. Now that I do yoga every day, I don't think of yoga as the way to gain something. It's just the normal part of my life, like brushing your teeth, like cooking meals. And a piano, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say writing is the same way. It's like you have to, you can't wait for inspiration. You just have to write, and you just have to stay consistent with it. Yeah,
exactly. And that's so fascinating, because it is about this just do itness, like that. Like we always think of the emotional, internal reason, motivation, inspiration. None of that matters. You just have to do it. And I think practice has become that way for me, and that's how a lot of people do practice every day. It's not because they love music more, or they have a crazy amount of motivation, or they're in better shape, or they're more disciplined. They just had a way of turning practice into what they do every day. And more they do that, they start to identify themselves as someone who practices, right? And then the identity feed you to do the action, and action makes you identify yourself, and that kind of like feed itself into practicing every day, and that becomes so easy to just do it every day. And so that's
I think there's some lessons from yoga there too, because one of the realizations I came to, and I've been doing yoga a very long time, probably close to 20 years at this point. And one of the big breakthroughs I had with yoga is when I kind of stopped caring what it looked like from the outside, and realizing that doesn't matter. It's what's going on inside your body that matters. So you might not look like you're doing very much of a stretch on the outside, but inside what your muscles and what your tendons feel like. If you're getting a stretch, or if you're if you're in alignment. Maybe you're not going as deep in the pose, but your alignment is better. That's better for you than trying to do the fancy variation that you have to reach farther into, but sacrifice your structure for.
Exactly. Yeah, I
I think
love
there's some
that.
parallels in I think there's some parallels in music too, because a lot of
Mhm.
times when you're doing the work, you know, one of the early lessons I found when I was first learning how to play viola is that
Mhm.
I found that when I practiced something, I could do it over and over. I might not get better at it,
Mhm.
but that practice was valuable, and it was adding to the bucket, so to speak. Because the next time I would play, all of a sudden I would notice I'd be better at it.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
it's like you can't always see the progress on the outside.
That's so true, and that's so huge to realize that. Um, Especially with the yoga, it's always a lot harder inside than what it looks from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost
Yeah.
so disappointing. You think you're reaching really far, and then you look later, it's like, what? I've only reached that far. But
Right.
like it doesn't. It's not about what it looks in the outside, and it's all the personal gain. That actually makes it a little bit difficult for music, because music isn't just about yourself. It's part self,
Yeah.
improvement, part almost religious practice, which is, yoga really is a religious
Mm-hmm.
practice. But music is a form of entertainment, form of communication, form of where the occasional everyone coming together and everyone like sharing this experience happens.
Mm-hmm.
So there is also the added challenge of,
That's
you
true.
do want to try to make this about other people too, right? Like
Mm.
you
Yeah.
do have to judge
But
how that sounds from the outside, which is that just like the same thing with the yoga. Like when we think we're doing so much and we listen from the outside, and it's like not enough. And
yeah.
it's so hard.
Well, I think too, one thing especially happens, especially with guitar players, is
Mm.
that um, there's practicing, and then there's noodling. And noodling is when
Mm-hmm.
you're just kind of like playing the things you're kind of good at and not really like diving in. So I
Mm-hmm.
think there is a parallel in that, it's not an exact parallel, but the idea of like when you're practicing, you should be diving into the things you're bad at and sound
Mm-hmm.
bad at. So you
Yeah,
can't be worried about how you sound when you're practicing, because you have to be working on the hard things that are going to make you sound bad, so that when
exactly.
you do perform, I think then you've acquired those skills, and you've
Mm-hmm.
built that into something that actually sounds good.
Exactly. The I think music is such a balanced and complex kind of art where um, it's a very physical thing too, because without the muscle memory, we absolutely cannot do any of the things. There's so much physically that is going on about being able to get this jump, or just don't. For viola playing, you have to think about where to shift, how the bowing is going, and then where it is. Like you constantly, there's so many ways to make it better and better and better, but
Yeah.
you almost have to do it so much so that you can do it without
Mhm.
thinking.
Yeah.
And then there's also the emotional aspect of the music, where you have to open your heart and you have to not care
Mm-hmm.
about the mistakes at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's also the identity part of it, where if you spend all the time practicing just the really difficult part and you miss most of the time, you're going to miss it on the stage too. Like when you are,
Interesting.
yeah, when you only spend the practice time to beat yourself up and just tell yourself how terrible you are as a musician, you can't even do this easy thing. Oh my gosh, let me try again and again and again, because practicing is about beating myself. Then you can actually hurt your identity as a performer, because that could
Mm-hmm.
really bring down your sense of self-worth, sense of like, I have something to say. So I've known some musicians who
Yeah.
go completely the other way, where they just beat themselves so much that
Yeah.
they just had to quit at some point.
That's what I felt being a music major was like. It was
Mhm.
just one big beat down. It was like a daily beat down. Like I
Yeah.
hate it. I didn't play. I don't think I played anything for about 5 years after leaving music school. Like
Yep.
I didn't touch viola, I didn't touch guitar, I didn't touch bass. Like I was in bands at the time. I quit my band. I was playing
Mm-hmm.
bass in a band, and I just didn't do anything. And it's like it slowly became. So music for me actually became almost a form of therapy later on. Like I started playing guitar and singing, and it was just for me. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have any designs about performing or anything. Like it was just
Yep.
something I did, and lately, especially in the last 3 or 4 months, I've really dove into music, and now I've been like studying theory again, and I'm playing guitar like pretty much on a daily basis. I'm writing music. It's I didn't expect it to happen, but it's been really really exciting for me.
That's amazing. The funny thing about, I think, music is that the more you need it or more you want, like expect yourself to be a certain place, and then just the harder you work, you almost go away from the actual meaning of music and what really music is about. But if you only rely on that core, then you lack the skill to be able to actually make this I mean, you don't really need the skill to make it an engaging concert, but the difference between music and other form of art, which is, you know, maybe painting, maybe other kind of thing, you might not have to have a lifetime of skill to do the art. You can call it art, whatever. But with music, I do think that the certain part of discipline, certain part of like, wow, this person really did this open heart, open emotion, and were able to do it well because of the skill. So as long as we're not getting mixed up between like a skill is the way for us to speak, not the other way around. Like skill isn't the only thing we need. We need the heart first, but we need to work on the skill so that our translation is going to not like eliminate what we're trying to do. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. I know what you're saying for sure.
Okay.
So I mean, is that kind of where you know, when you're a piano player that's like at the level where you've gone through a doctorate, basically, I mean, you've been playing piano a very long time. You know, does the goal kind of shift from like trying to play more and more difficult pieces to shifting more to like the emotional side of it?
Absolutely. Yep. I no longer dream about playing this crazy things. And there's also the sense that I don't quite have that time to either. You know, like I think when you are younger, your goal really is to try to just up level in terms of the technical difficulty, and just really play next Liszt, next Rachmaninoff, next this, and your teacher also give you that kind of pieces. But that's why the piano repertoire is really great. There are pieces that are purely technical, just showiness. And there are pieces that are a lot more intellectual, like it requires you to be a grown-up person who understand a lot of other things to be able to deliver these beautiful things. So, for instance, 10 years ago, I probably did struggle making music deeper than what I was doing technically. But now I would always be able to play the note the way I want it to be, and I'm going to create something in between each note. So I might just play two notes, but then I have a better knowledge and better skill to be able to make those two notes sound a lot more magical than what I could like 10 years ago. And that is a skill I won't lose. Like even if I take a break for a couple of years, if I come back, I will still have that skill with me.
Are there any pieces that you can't play at this point?
Oh, many. Many. Yes, piano repertoire. It's like the hardness, the level of how hard and how much it could get. It's really high.
So that mountain just keeps going, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Yep. And in each generation comes the better pianists who can do better thing with their fingers and everything. But you know, at the end of the day, people aren't going to the concert to see the circus. They want to be touched. They want the performer with open heart, want to communicate and want to get to know the audience, and that magic is supposed to happen. So there's like good in every stage of piano learning and every kinds of pianist, and there's strength and weakness of different kinds of pianists too. But I think I'm just becoming more and more refined in my own way of communicating and my arts, that I no longer look at other graphs and be like, I wish I had that fingers to be able to play this like crazy things. And no, I no longer wish that kind of stuff.
What outside of your own playing, like what kind of music do you get excited about nowadays? Excuse me.
Strangely, I only listen to classical music. I told that
Really?
to some of my friends, and that's very strange to people. I think a lot of people love listening to jazz, and I used to too. I just really like classical music. Listening,
Nice.
I do have a certain composer I like to listen to versus others. I like French impressionists more. I also like listening to German, but I don't like plain German composers. You know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The more Debussy.
Yeah, Ravel is my favorite composer of all time. Yes.
Good stuff.
He did not write a single piece that was bad. Even the ones that everyone hates, it's so good.
Nice. Well, hey, this has been really fun having you on the podcast.
Yeah. Yes, I really enjoyed. I think I said a lot of things I never said before. I was able to really dive deep and think about the music in a different way, because I am so used to talking about music with musicians who understand what it's like to be a musician and what music means to them. So I never really went and talked about what really music is and what that does for me. So I really enjoyed this opportunity to kind of reflect on that.
That's cool. So if people want to follow you, how should they do it? You have a YouTube channel, right?
I do, yes. That would be Rie Tanaka Piano. I do have a website. That would be riepiano.com. I am pretty active on Instagram, Facebook page. I have two. I have one for a pianist, so Rie Tanaka Pianist. That's for Facebook and Instagram. And I also have Wellness for Musicians. These days, I'm more active on that one because I really like just doing daily yoga and just take pictures as a way of recording myself to see where I am. So that has been that way. And I'm also planning to do some live stream concert. There's one this Saturday. I don't know how this episode is gonna come around, so I didn't want to really mention like the time sensitive thing, but
this one will probably come out next week. So if you had one the following week, we can plug that one.
Great. I don't have anything after this Saturday, but I will announce it on Facebook also.
Cool. Well, make sure you guys follow along on her pages so you can see those live streams coming. Are you gonna have any? Are you going to do any like guest performances at UWSP in the future?
I was planning. Yeah, it was actually on the calendar. I was supposed to do that last month, but with COVID-19, that got canceled too. There's another concert in Wausome, I think in November also, that I'm going there to perform. Another concert in Wausome also got canceled. I perform with the piano trio every summer as part of South Beach up north, and that's in Wausome. That's been going on for 10 years or more or so, like that. So I've been really enjoying being around Wausome area, performing there. And I think there will be a couple that comes out in the next a few seasons.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, you know me, BC_Kowalski on Instagram and Facebook. And also we've got a Facebook page, Keep It Wausome. It's growing a little more every day, which is pretty cool. So
great.
I want to thank my guest, Rie, for being on today. Hey, Rie, and also want to thank my producer, Harold Mello. Make sure you check out his band Substyle on all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, all those other ones I don't even know anymore. But I always end the podcast, have my guests say, keep it Wausome. So keep it Wausome, Rie.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for everything you do, Brian.
You guys keep it.
Wausome?
Keep it Wausome. There we go. Okay, bye everyone.
All right, bye.